Not used to it. I wanted to share my story and am hoping for some sort of reality check. I don't have a good personal support system, but I feel like I can relate to some of the people here. One thing that bothers me about sharing this is that I cannot provide all details about our relationship or her side of the story. So, what follows is a decidedly biased presentation of the situation. My wife and I have been together about 12 years. Our relationship was never really very strong. Early in the relationship, she was clingy and would fly off the handle whenever I did something she didn't like. I specifically remember a time in college where she said something like, "So what are we doing for dinner?" And I said, "Well, I wasn't really planning on dinner with you tonight and was going to do something else instead." She was in her car in the parking lot of my apartment building. She got pulled over, that I didn't want to spend the evening with her. Slammed the car door, literally peeled rubber out of there. I share that story as an intro to the idea that I am unable to share my feelings with her. It's not all her fault. I choose to be this way. There is certainly some personal accountability for being this way. I am always afraid of her reactions. In every situation, I find myself analyzing what she wants out of it. And I suppress my true desires and always choose to do what I think she wants. That is a very frustrating existence to live. So, as I mentioned, our relationship was never strong. How could it be when I feel I could never tell her how I really feel about anything? I've never felt she was a friend of mine, and I've never expressed my needs, emotional, physical, or otherwise. I just don't really feel like she cares or that she would try to accommodate them. I've always felt like I was fighting her, and never felt like we were partners. I also never really met her emotional needs. She is a very demanding housemate, and I felt like I worked my ass off to meet her housekeeping expectations. I always felt a bit exhausted and couldn't do all that and be the emotional partner she wanted. She was often very clear about what she wanted emotionally, and I never really tried to meet her needs. We were married 6 years ago. 6 years ago, there was a guy at work she flirted with a lot. I never knew anything about it. I was not meeting her needs, didn't pay her attention. He was transferring out of the country and they had a going-away party. I don't think the party was very big. My wife arranged things so she was out with him, and a few of her friends, and I was at home. They got drunk, danced together, made out, kissed and petted. She drove him back to the hotel, and claims she didn't go in. She didn't come home that night. She said she drove to her friend's house to spend that night, because she was too drunk to drive home. I don't really believe the story she tells about how the night ended. I'm sure you can all imagine what I think really happened. She told me about it the next day. But before she told me, she created a new email address, sent herself pictures of her and him from that night on this new email address, deleted those pictures from our camera, and also goggled his name. Of course, those are things I discovered by snooping. She moved out for a few months. We got back together. Our relationship never really changed. We did some kind counseling. It didn't ever affect how we acted. She never really talked about why it happened. We never set up any boundaries. I never dealt with any of my frustration or anger. A few months ago, she got a new job. Frankly, I was pretty happy about that. She was still working at the place where she had met the other guy, although he was long gone, and I certainly harbored some bad feelings about that place. Our relationship was at a new low. We have 2 kids, 5 and 2-year-old. It's exhausting. I spent the summer working on a big backyard project. It's exhausting. I work a fairly competitive full-time job. We went weeks without speaking to each other about anything other than the kids. She began spending more and more time on Facebook. She got a smartphone and spent a lot of time texting, emailing, and Facebook from that. Whenever we went anywhere, we'd pile the kids in. I'd drive, and she'd have her phone out and be on Facebook or texting by the time we got to the end of the driveway. She'd often stand in the kitchen, looking at something on her phone, instead of paying attention to the kids or me. So, she had a going-away party on her last day. I was the DD and drove everyone around in our minivan. I was the sober guy in a group full of people drinking. No one was ridiculously drunk. I was tired, had been sick all week. There was one guy who she works with, who she talked to all the time at work, texted him and talked to him on Facebook. A lot. I never really cared, because I never really cared that much about our relationship. That night of her party, I felt like she spent all night talking to him. His wife was there even, but her and him would sit alone at the end of the table, at one bar. And at another bar they literally went to a different table to be alone and talk to each other. Finally, about 1 a.m., we go to a bar that she wants to dance at, and her and 2 other girls go out on the floor. At this point, I'm really a bit pissed and exhausted. We'd been out for 7 hours. And they had started even earlier than that. And I'm in no mood to dance. Of course, her friend from work was, so he goes out to dance with them. The equal's not happy. Then I look up and he's walking back to hand me her purse so she can keep dancing. I snapped at that point. I grabbed her, said we are leaving, and we walked out. About 10 steps out of the bar I just blurted out, "You know you cheated on me with these people, right?" We got in the car and I just unloaded on her. I started with our relationship as so ducked up and proceeded from there. She was drunk and didn't say a single word back, and I bet she doesn't remember anything I said. So, we slept in different beds that night, and I was really unhappy about everything. I wanted to know how she felt about things, so I checked her text messages. I found that she was telling one of her friends about how embarrassed she was that we just left, and I just yelled at her about everything. I felt like she didn't understand at all how upset I was about our relationship. I also found a message from her coworker friend that said, "I really like, not love, you a lot," at 1:38 a.m. At that point I really felt like she was having an emotional affair. With him. Later that day I told her I wanted out of this relationship. There wasn't anything left in it. Later that night we talked, and I finally told her about how I felt like I couldn't trust her with my feelings. I told her I felt like she takes advantage of me. I told her I didn't think she'd ever change anything, that she'd always just do whatever she wanted to do and would never care about my feelings. We stayed together, and had a friend pass away a few days later. She was not close to this friend but hung out with him as a group of friends. In the 12 years we were together, I think we saw this guy 3 times. Another of the group of friends, named Bruce, had always made me uneasy. He always seemed to look just an extra half second at my wife. So, a few days after telling my wife about how badly I felt our relationship was, Bruce came back to town for the funeral. My wife didn't even know where Bruce lived. She asked, and I said sure, to go out to dinner with Bruce the day before the funeral. So, she was gone that night. The next night was the funeral. She went to that while I took care of the kids. After the funeral, a group of them went to their parents' house. We are close with many of this group of people, and these parents are almost like parents to my wife. And she got drunk and spent the night there, as soon as she texted me to say she was going to stop by their house. I knew she'd spend the night there. Of course, Bruce was there, and for some reason something felt terribly wrong. I didn't sleep at all that night. I felt like I had been abandoned after finally telling her how I really felt about things. She came home the next day and I was obviously upset about it. She asked me about it and again I regressed and didn't tell her how I really felt. I just said, it bothered me. She never said sorry for not coming home. She never said thanks for taking care of the kids and everything else while I dealt with this situation. Things went downhill fast after that. All my suppressed anger bubbled up. I didn't talk to her, and when we did talk, I just attacked. A few days later I get in her phone again. I found an email to one of her friends where she said Bruce had called her that next day and told her that he wanted to leave his wife to be with my wife. Again, I snapped. Obviously, I was upset. I confronted her and she said she can't control what other people say to her. Things went further downhill. I obsessed about her and Bruce. I obsessed about her and her friend from work. I obsessed about her 6 years ago. I stopped sleeping and eating. Eventually I got help. I went to a therapist who gave me some tools to let some of the anger out. I apologized to my wife. I told her I wanted to be with her. We decided to go to counseling. I changed my view on things. I started trying to meet her emotional needs. Our relationship grew over the course of a month, and interestingly, it was really easy. I liked meeting her needs. Things were great. I was really happy. She was really happy. Unfortunately, that's not the end of the story. She continued to text all the time on her password-protected phone. She continued to spend large amounts of time on Facebook. She continued to log out of her email and Facebook whenever she wasn't using it. She spends large amounts of time on some craft website. I don't feel like she's shown any interest in understanding what my needs might be or how she could meet them. She also continued talking to Bruce. She would talk to him during and after work on the drive home. She would text him and talk to him on Facebook. Of course, she says she just wants to be his friend. But I've also read emails where she admits she likes the attention he pays her, and that she knows I would be mad if I knew she was talking to him. She also said she's had multiple conversations with him regarding his feelings for her. She never told me about anything with him. I had to find it by snooping. She didn't tell me she was still talking to him, but she did know it would upset me. Since then, I had to snoop to find she was still talking to him and confronted her about it. And she says she stopped. I was pretty much able to deal with that. During our last counseling session, we started to get into the thing with Bruce, then ran out of time. Since then, she's spent as much time as ever texting on her phone, spending time on the computer, etc. She knows it bothers me. Again, the trust drained out of me. I don't think she'll do anything to ever protect my feelings, and I don't feel like I can share them with her. I've told her that and she gets defensive, saying I'm blaming her for everything. She rationalized continuing her friendship with Bruce and that she wasn't hiding things from me. She just wasn't telling me things and she doesn't see any problems with that. That was the moment the trust started to go away. The last couple days I just shut down again. She's thrown me out of the house 3 times in the last week. She says she won't stand for being treated like crap, by which she means when I act distant and don't talk to her. She wants the wonderful relationship we had for the last month. I want it too. I want a better relationship though, one where she meets my needs too. Every time we talk about this, it ends up being a "you always blame me" and a "what are you doing to change it? How are you making it better right now?" discussion. lettuce of attacking and lots of defending. She says I'm being irrational. She says I'm not trying. She says I'm treating her like crap. She thinks I'm going through a mental breakdown because I went from perfect husband to I don't trust you husband. This is hard to hear. She tells me it's my fault. I won't give her a chance, that there is something wrong with me. Let me ask you guys this. If there was no physical affair involved, which is what she swears by, I want to R primarily because I can't imagine the thought of my 2-year-old son growing up calling another man daddy. So in pursuit of R, still am unsure of what to do about the past. Let me assume there was Pa with Bruce. You guys feel I need to force her to admit something or prove otherwise? Or do I just draw that line in the sand and move from there? Days later. Well, I have called several divorce attorney offices just now. It's lunch hour and I didn't have much luck. We'll continue to pursue. I now believe, as many of you have suggested, my wife and I have been in limbo since the first Pa. 6 long years. I am reading about how to set boundaries. The concept that is not immediately apparent to me is the idea that I am setting the boundaries on myself and not trying to control her, because it feels an awful lot like trying to control her actions is exactly what I want to do. My counselor told me you can only control what you do, and I have faith I'll eventually figure the idea of boundaries out. I feel like a goddamn fool. Yesterday when I was leaving, I told her I'd be staying with my mom for a while. She just emailed me asking if that was still the plan. Is this too harsh of a reply? Are you staying at your mom's? No, I am not going to leave my house because you have a problem with the distance I feel as a result of your actions. If you don't like it, you can leave, but you aren't taking the kids. I wish I could get in to see a lawyer today. I want to do this tonight. Another night unresolved is going to be toxic. I want to be able to put the D papers down right in front of her. Saying, well, I called a bunch of lawyers today and I'm waiting for them to call me back isn't quite the same. Her response is to that email. It's so easy to see how it's trying to manipulate me. And it's so easy to see how setting boundaries solves this. Do you really think it's a healthy atmosphere for our children? Honestly, I am just asking for a couple of days away. When you wanted that, it was fine for you to leave. Now that I am asking you for a break for a couple of days, it's unreasonable. That last one was very interesting. I wrote back I didn't say it was unreasonable. I said no. She's never heard me say no to her before. I was able to make an appointment for this afternoon. She continues to try to manipulate me into not coming home tonight. It's an incredible feeling to do what I want to. I can see exactly where I would have said, oh okay honey, I'll do it your way in the past. I can clearly see the gaslighting for what it is now. In the past it would have confused me and made me waver. No effect whatsoever now. The fit she throws could be huge. While I certainly do not discount the conclusions you guys have come to regarding her as a serial cheater, I do believe that she wants a happy marriage that fulfills her needs. I could see her reading the proposal and calming agreeing to it. Just got back from lawyer. Maybe he's just after my money. But even my lawyer said she doesn't respect my feelings. I mean really, the lawyer said that. Unexpected to say the least. She called my mom and convinced my mom I am having a nervous breakdown. I have to head over to mom's now and explain I'm not crazy. Or at least I don't think I am. The situations I've found myself in over the last week are just so bizarre. She called my mom saying I wasn't being myself, and that she thought something was really wrong with me. Also, that she had asked me to leave and I wouldn't. I would go stay with my mom if I left. I didn't bring my mom into it. Obviously, my mom then called me. There is a distant history of bad things in my family and the way she framed it. My mom was very worried. When I went and talked to my mom, I showed her my boundary list. I asked her if there was a single thing on there that was unreasonable or irrational. She agreed there was not. We just got done with our talk. She didn't want to talk, but I insisted we do it anyway. I started by taking full responsibility for my shortcomings in terms of meeting her emotional needs. I then explained that I have the right to have my expectations met in our marriage and shared the list with her. I told her that she did not have to decide right away, but that if she could not promise to meet those expectations, I would file for divorce. I told her I had met with a lawyer who had papers filled out and was waiting for the go-ahead. Her initial reaction was I don't have anything to say, and she tried to go to bed. I went about my business and moments later she came to talk it over. It was so much easier than I'd have thought. She went through a bunch of fitness tests and manipulation techniques, crying, agreeing to divorce. You are painting me like a criminal. Now that I know about those, they are so easy to see through. I stayed calm, listened to her, acknowledged her feelings, and sent a consistent message throughout. If you cannot meet my expectations in this marriage, I am not going to continue to be married. I made sure it all came back to that, in a calm and deliberate fashion. She seems to have begrudgingly agreed to things. A few sticking points, which I held pretty firm to. All in all, I feel a hell of a lot better and I don't really care what happens from here. I intend to work on my nice guy condition and generally improve my life. If she comes along for the ride, great. If she doesn't, That's great too. I asked her to provide full text logs to prove she was no longer talking to Bruce. That was the big sticking point in our discussion earlier. She kept talking about how I was going to freak out when I saw them because of the volume of them and spun about 7 other reasons not to show them to me. She just delivered them to me along with the message that she had not broken off contact with him and had texted him a number of times since I asked her to stop, and she promised to stop, and she told me she had stopped. It was very hard to keep calm about that, but I also didn't feel like flying off the handle was going to do any good. So, I asked that we shelf the issue for a while. She's upstairs flipping out, the whole "my life sucks" routine. I guess I'm not sure what to think of this. She lied. She lied about not lying. Everything in me wants to go up and yell and scream at her about this. I'm not sure I want to push for action tonight. I have an appointment with my therapist Friday. I'd like to wait till after that appointment before I do anything. Then on Monday we have an appointment with our MC. That might be a better place to bring it back up. I just went up there and calmly told her she has a decision to make about her behavior, that the lying is so much worse than the fact she was texting Bruce. I told her I can't control her actions, but I will not accept lying anymore. She does not get any more chances. At this point I am leaning toward D, but I want to give this a little time to marinate before filing. It's just crazy. She told me again and again she had stopped talking to him. Oh man, I just can't even believe it. This morning I received a healthy dose of "what do you want me to do about it? Nothing I do is going to matter and it's not enough time to change." Also got some "see, this is why we can't talk about it." You get so mad. Guilt shifting, minimizing, rationalizing. It was all there. I actually stayed pretty calm and laid down that if there aren't drastic changes in her behavior by Wednesday of next week I am filing. I said again and again, I am not telling her what to do. She can behave how she wants. I don't think I was strong enough on the idea that her behavior will have consequences though. Would like to go back and make sure that got fully stated. This woman could be a great mother and great partner. There is potential. I still consider R she needs to get out of the fog. But D is a much more likely occurrence than it was yesterday at this time. Again, thank you all for looking at the truth. I said in my first response, it was hard to hear. It's hard to be told you are living in a world built around lies and the person you've put so much trust and faith in cares nothing for your feelings. Mistakes. I can live with someone making mistakes, but these are not mistaking. This is behavior. It's also tough to be shown that by being a coward I allowed all of this to happen. I only saw the log of when texts and calls were placed. Have not seen the contents. Her and Bruce have been in a circle of friends for a long time. Out of that group, like 4 of them are gone due to meds. Another of that group, in fact a close family friend who is like a brother to her, just got admitted for alcoholism and is going through detox. She says they corresponded regarding that. Do I believe her? My point of view is now aligned with the way you guys see this situation, so I do not need to bother telling you if I believe her. It is funny, but looking at the dates, they totally correspond to the time I started to withdraw and say I couldn't trust her, almost down to the minute. And of course, she told me over and over that her and Bruce weren't talking and I was being irrational, delusional, and needed to go seek help. She sent me the text and call logs as Excel files, and I know she spent some time at least looking through them. I would not put it past her to have edited them out so she could put a rational story behind her activity. If we pursue R, one of the first steps will be taking a look at those source files and determining if she edited them. If I pursue D, I don't care, so I'm not going to bother now. I got a VAR last night, only to realize when I was going to start it up that it didn't come with batteries. It would be interesting to go back and listen to the number of strategies she came up with to avoid showing me those text and call logs. She's so deep in the fog she's dragging lots of other people into it with her. My mom saw right through her fog when I explained the situation. She's also dragged her dad into it and several of her really close friends. Are there any effective strategies for helping someone out of their fog, or is it just a matter of letting whatever happens, happen? I can't make her see the truth the same way I can't make her tell the truth. It's a decision she'll have to make. That hardest part of this is staying calm and not getting sucked into the games. In other words, passing the fitness tests. Today was sort of tough, often on feelings of peace, anger, sadness, occasionally intense, but never for the duration of time after the D-Day. It comes and goes. It'll get better. I now see the wisdom of taking the 180 stance and have essentially been following that process. Okay, this is bothering me now. She asks what I want her to do. I don't believe she is out of the fog yet. Do I ignore or do I lay out the 3 steps to regaining trust for her? Personally, I'd really like to see her find out the way to deal with this on her own. The question is really more short-term. While she is in the fog, she believes her own lies. To tell her, for instance, to tell the whole truth. She has consistently told me she is telling the whole truth, only for me to trickle additional truth out of her later. Until she leaves the fog, she will not reveal the whole truth because in her reality, she already has revealed the whole truth. Asking her today to reveal the whole truth leads to an escalation of emotional conflict which allows her to deflect the issue. I'm not playing that game with her. Also, while in the fog, She cannot accept full responsibility for her actions, nor can she be remorseful. She is unable to understand the pain she has inflicted. The only things she can do at this point are give me full transparency, which she has offered but does not fully allow, and write a NC letter. I haven't brought up the NC letter yet. I would like for her to research a fair resolution and discover this for herself. I laid it out pretty clear this morning. I took some of the information from the Nice Guy book and put it in play. I usually avoid confrontation and conflict at all possible costs. Well, I've decided I am taking the amount of money necessary to pay my lawyer's retaining costs out of our joint savings accounts and putting it into an account under my name. It's less than half of the smallest of our savings accounts. I talked to my lawyer about this, who advised it is perfectly legal, will not be viewed negatively by a judge in a divorce hearing, and that I should allow her the courtesy of telling her I am going to do it before I do it. I like my lawyer, by the way. Obviously, I knew what her reaction to this news would be. I have been using the 180 steps. So this morning I was awesome with our son. Our daughter always sleeps late. Let her sleep in a little, was not unfriendly with the DS, showed on several instances cooperation on domestic issues, simply being a good person. Then at the first good opportunity, I told her I needed to talk to her. I just plain said I am taking less than half of the money out of this savings account and moving into a new account which you will not have access to. Her reaction was predictable. She tried to turn herself into the victim and gave me a number of fitness tests. You haven't given me enough time to change. What do you want me to do? I simply said I am open to working on things, but I have a right to get a divorce anytime I want, and I have a right to protect myself. I am not willing to be married to the person you are right now. She said something like, I can't even take your name off that other account to which I returned. You can take the money out of there. She said, do you really think I would do that? And I calmly looked her in the eyes and said, I absolutely think you would. I am not doing this to attack you. I am giving you the courtesy of knowing before I do it. And I walked away. It felt amazingly good to be in control and to get what I expect out of a conversation. I'd also like to say that the way I feel right now is pretty incredible. I feel free and happy and full of energy. I no longer have to worry about my wife lying to me or cheating on me. It's simple. Either she doesn't do those things, or she isn't my wife. An incredibly large chunk of my emotional being has been tied up with that. I knew what was going on deep down in my soul, but my brain wouldn't accept it. My brain, and for that matter my entire worldview, and my soul were in a 24/7 battle over who was right. You guys have opened my eyes and it has become clear that my soul was right. Do you know how good it feels just to know that everything I ever felt deep down in my heart was right? The amount of confidence poisoning self-doubt that simply flew out the window was astounding. I was never wrong. I was never paranoid. I deserve better than I have been given. I'm doing right by myself and I'm doing right by my kids, and I don't give a flying crap what anyone else says. Just alerted my coworkers of situation in the following email. I'm going public with all this, telling friends tonight. No longer living a life of sweeping things under a rug. I just wanted to let you all know that my marriage is in a state of crisis. I won't burden anyone with unrequested details, but there have been repeated and deliberate breaches of trust, and the effect on me personally is tremendous. Trying to keep the rather bizarre feeling circumstances of all this completely private is too much of a burden for me to bear, and rather than alarm you all with the odd behavior. And it doesn't help that my cell phone caller ID shows up as hospital. I'm telling you now, privacy I don't really care about at this point. Divorce is a highly likely outcome. I have been and probably will continue to make and receive phone calls and attend personal meetings regarding this matter over the coming days, weeks, months, years, and ask for your understanding and flexibility. Had a session with my therapist, T, today. It went really awesome. She validated everything I've felt, said, done. I suppose that's her job. T said clearly my wife is not in touch with reality. I'm sure my T already had me pegged as a nice guy who had suppressed his true self. She asked me how it felt to be able to let that out. It feels amazing. The way self-confidence has returned to me so quickly and in such volume is incredible. This may be TMI, but I've never been comfortable walking around naked in the gym locker room. I noticed today when I went to change, I just took off the clothes. I didn't glance over my shoulder and try to arrange myself so no one could see or get anxiety or anything. I just didn't have clothes on, no big deal. T helped me come up with some strategies for how to deal with upcoming MC session. And I have another T session prior to our MC session to come up with more ideas. I expect this session will make or break our chances of R. If she does not demonstrate full honesty at that session, I file the next morning. Right now, I am limiting truth-telling those who I believe can see through the fog. I have told my mom everything. She is supportive of me and her grandchildren, and fully understands the situation as well. I mentioned before I do not have a good support network. However, I am telling my two best friends tonight. They and their wives are close to me and her. The word will spread. Those who are in the fog will live in denial. I have been tempted a number of times to tell her dad, since she used his advice. which I do not believe she actually received, or she lied extensively to him to try to convince me I was going insane. She also had a friend who texted me the riot act about how I was treating her and how she deserved better. I have resisted doing that so far. Don't tell her family. I think that's sound advice because telling them turns into denial, emotional escalation, and all the other tricks she uses herself. Hard to resist though. I do think one of the steps she is going to have to go through is telling these people the truth. The whole truth, and nothing but the truth. One thing I began to realize today is how many of her friends and family have participated in the construction and perpetration of her warped version of reality. That sort of thing really makes you wonder. Just got an incredibly long email fitness test. I scanned it and saw the typical maneuvers, including a lead-off about how she hates being in limbo, and stopped reading. What I saw absolutely made my blood start to boil, but I reeled it back in. My response was this: I just want to tell you I will not read this email. You have caused me an incredible amount of pain and misery, and I will not accept your behavior any longer. You are not in limbo. There is a very simple choice for you to make. Comments. So, you're still afraid. I thought you manned up. Guess not. There ain't no sides here. There is right and wrong. Excuse me, OP, but didn't you say she has till next Wednesday to change? I'm sure you did. Please excuse me for asking, but with something just over 120 hours to go before Wednesday, just what the hell do you think your first step should be? How do you plan to have her prove she has changed? I tell you what, have a few more pointless arguments on how exactly she has to change, though how you'll prove it in just over 120 hours is beyond me. Can I ask what exactly will be her sign that she has had a road conversion? I am afraid you are in your own fog. You just haven't understood yet. Your wife did this to you because she had no respect for you. You have been a beta male your whole relationship. Now you have shown an alpha side to yourself, which is very attractive to her, and I will bet you $100 that that is what attracted her to Bruce. And she is starting to react to it. She is waiting to see if you mean it, or like every other time before, you revert back to beta status. The problem is this: that you think she was the only one who needed to change. OP responds, I'm certainly not afraid, I just don't think it's a wise move right now. I have discovered over the last 6 weeks a lot of things I need to change about myself, and I have also shown the ability to change these things. While it seems rather ludicrous to point to this, I have shown her over the last 6 weeks that I understand how I had failed to meet her needs in the relationship, and some of the destructive behaviors that I participate in for my personal life. I have implemented change and done so consistently. I am, in fact, now the alpha male in this relationship, which means I control how and when things are done. The reveal step, as you are suggesting, is not something that I am doing as a first step. My first step is seeing if she proves a change to honest behavior. Without that, nothing else matters. I will not manipulate her into having honestly. Either she does it of her own free will or I file. I have 2 tests devised for her regarding that issue. I have made sure she is aware of this thread, so in the unlikely event she looks, I'm not telling you what they are. Couple weeks later, I have gone through a lot of ups and downs, but I have to admit I'm really happy with myself right now. I used to be an extreme introvert. I used to walk through a room and literally think to myself, none of these women would ever have any interest in me. I always felt emotionally exhausted, deficient thinking, and was close to no one. By recognizing the ways that I subconsciously sabotage my life and push people away, I've been able to discover self-respect. I feel like I have more energy. I feel happier. I am able to relate to people. I am actually outgoing and find it incredibly easy to have sustained conversations with strangers and friends alike. My work life has improved significantly as I now face conflict and resolve issues rather than finding any way possible to avoid conflict. I feel like a much different person. On the other hand, Christmas was very hard for me. WS and I are attempting but sometimes I just can't even be in the same room as her. We wrapped our kids' presents together and I was signing them Mommy and Daddy. It was one of the most difficult experiences in my life. Christmas lunch at my WS grandma's house was torture. I was sitting at the table talking to her 87 or so year old uncle, the nicest, most stand-up guy I've ever met, and I just wanted to scream, do you know what she's done? She's made progress on her end, but I have trouble being patient. I've put an incredible amount of time and effort into changing myself, not for her, but to make myself happier. I watch her just go about her life like nothing happened and put little to no effort into changing herself. She has taken some actions and her views on things have changed from I've never done anything wrong to I did these 2 really bad things but you made marriage suck for the whole time in between, which I did. It's been amazing reading the Nice Guy book and digging deep to understand the way I have been shaped. In 1956 my grandpa X himself, leaving my 2-year-old father to grow up fatherless. I didn't even find out about that family secret until I was 20 years old. I see now how it affected him. Then he modeled his behavior to me, and that is definitely part of the way I was shaped. I find the deeper I dig, the more I understand and the more I begin to truly feel things. The blatant refusal to allow myself to feel anything emotionally has been a huge issue in my marriage. But of course, I never admitted that to myself until recently. A month later, I had a hardcore trigger, followed by a massive panic attack. Sparing the details, it was something stupid and innocent, and I recognized it as such and tried to contain the damage. Went to the old standby of journaling, and while working through that exercise realized the core problem, and after 2 pages wrote a list of what I was feeling, which helped tremendously. What bothers me most about this incident is how weak it makes me feel. It was like a slap in the face, how much my WS actions still have control over my life. I want to be in control of how I feel and how happy I am. Off to gym now, trying to take care of myself. I feel like I am making great progress in many areas of my life. But progress with the WS seems non-existent. At the moment anyway, and I feel like I personally am taking steps backwards in that department, and I just really don't like feeling this way. One of the problems is when I get upset and I withdraw from my WS. We are trying to R, and the cycle of withdrawal prevents us from making progress towards R. We have made good progress towards R so far, but my withdrawing feels to me as if it puts us back at square one. I suppose I am harboring guilt over that behavior, especially because I know it is upsetting for my WS, who has an intense but unadmitted fear of abandonment, and is a repeat of the behavior patterns I have that contributed to a very unhealthy marriage. Anyway, just venting frustration and being introspective about the situation. No marriage is worth saving at all costs. Why be in a marriage where I'm miserable? Feel like my marriage is coming to an end, and I am just delaying the ending. Let me sort out my finances and see the lawyer again. My comment: this is exactly why I never advise staying with a cheater. This isn't how you want to live your life, so you get rid of her. Agree? Comment down below, sub and bell, and on to the next series.